Hey guys, so for this last video for this homework assignment series, what I'm gonna do is open a file and just open one of the scenes that I have here, which is the character controller. Now, in reality, ideally, you should be creating your own animations and everything, but it's gonna be taking a good chunk of your time if you were to do all the walking, running, jumping, and everything that there is to do in this exercise for this assignment, right? So I provided a couple of them already in my courses through the started content. So if I go to file and I say import, and then I go to my source images folder, I can basically just import, let's say, the walk on top of the thing that I already have. And ideally, that is going to let me create the controllers. Now, unfortunately, because I'm using the character controllers here and the animation is being driven by the controllers themselves, not the skeleton, uh, it's basically not doing the thing that it's supposed to do. See, it's doing just like the shoulders. So in a different world, I would be using this vine without the controllers. And in this point, I can just go File and then say Import and then re-import the, let's say, again, the walk. And that is going to be appending that animation onto the correct one. Okay, so once I have that animation, I can either import it from the character controller or I can import it from here. So if I was going to export it from here, I'll say just select the root, File, Export Selection, Game Exporter. And then on the animation clip, make sure that I only export the selection, do this, and say here I'm going to be exporting the walk. I will call this walk underscore temp because I already have a walk and I don't want it to be overridden on the other one. So source images and just export it. I have the FBX review, so I should be able to see information in here if I had the mesh, but I didn't select the mesh. I just exported the root, and that is really important for what we're going to be doing later. And I'll show you the difference. If I go to file and open the scene, I kept my part V for the assignment. So that is my schedule. Okay, so I have that, and I will do the root file export selection. Oh, game exported, my bad. Keep on doing that. And this is going to be the schedule from 0 to 90, and that is going to be I'm gonna call these FNF skeleton, FNF underscore skeleton, because that is the name that I have for the other files, right? And I will be saving these in my desktop. And again, I couldn't see that other file. So you can do the two routes. You can do the export with the character control scene if that's where you created yours, as you can see in mine, or you can just use the ones that I have created. So the important part here is that I'm gonna go to Unreal Engine and I'm gonna be creating a new project. So this is gonna be a game project. And I don't want to use any starter content. This is really important. So no starting content is blank, and it's going to be a blueprint base. It is going to be a third-person character controller. Blueprint, desktop, maximum quality. You can do scalable if it works better in your computer. No starter content, no retracing. At least for me, there's no point in doing that. And I will be saving these in my desktop. This one is going to be, the project is going to be called A4c, and I'm gonna call that the Badija L. I'm gonna say underscore, and this is not gonna be the clean version. There's gonna be another video that's gonna show you how to clean this up, but I'm just gonna call this not clean. Oh, it's too long. Well, I'm just gonna say dirty, and it doesn't even like that. Dirt. It is going to contain a lot of files that I'm not going to be using for the next part. So I'm just going to see here and say create. Now that I have that, it is going to keep on doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's going to create the project and it's going to take a while to launch it. So I will pause the video here and continue once this is long. Okay, so with Unreal Engine running, the first thing that I always like doing is trying my best to see that the actual project is functional. So I'm gonna hit play and I'm just gonna walk around the world, jumping. Yeah, everything is in place, like the template came with the right files. Call me paranoid or whatever, but there was one time in which I did all the coding in here and the template didn't came in with all of the values that I needed. So I spent a good time trying to figure out what was wrong, and it wasn't on my side. It was there was a couple of files that weren't copied. So always try or always test your code, your template before running. So anyways, when we're here, I'm gonna be creating a new project folder. So add So I'm gonna right click and say add a new folder. This one is gonna be IGME. Inside of IGME, I'm gonna be making yet another project folder, and this is gonna be IGME 219. And in here, I'm gonna be creating a new folder. This one is going to be called materials, and I will be creating a new material. This is going to be a m underscore master. So with master, what I'm going to do is hit import, and I want to import the textures that I already have on my desktop that I exported, right? So I'm going to go here, I'm going to go to the starter, and I'm going to go to source images, and in source images, I'm just going to import everything that I have here, Freddy and ORM. So I have all of those. All right, so by default, Unreal is going to load these guys as sRGB. Remember, they are not sRGB, so I need to disable that flag and hit save. So sRGB means that it's living in the sRGB space, or that it's normalized between 0 and 1, which is totally not the case for these textures. It is smart enough to know that the normal maps are not going to be sRGBs, but whatever, I'm going to be hitting save now. So I'll save all of these. What is master? In my case, master is going to be the master file that I'm going to be using for creating my other materials. So for that, I'm going to be selecting these three, and I'm just going to drag and drop them. Okay. So once I have them in place, what I'll do is select the RGB and connect that to base color. This one is going to go to normal, and R is going to be going to ambient occlusion. Green is going to be going to roughness, and blue is going to be going to metallic. So now that I have that master material, it's time for me to make a parameter. So convert to parameter. This one is going to be called base color. This one here, I'm going to convert to parameter. This one is going to be my ORN. And this one, I'm going to say convert to parameter. This is going to be mine. We have done this in the past, but it's a good thing to have. So with that, I will be creating two children material. They're going to be material instance from this point forward, but I don't have the default values for these. So what I'm going to do is just make a new for material instance. I can actually just say material, right click and say create material instance. This is going to be mi, and I will call this Freddy. Open the file. It's going to look exactly the same. That is the nature of using the same textures, but it's going to be a material instance instead of a regular material. So with that, I'm going to select, and I will say, yeah, all of these are the ones that you're going to be using. So Freddy, color, normal, and ORM. And that is such, if I open another file that is going to use the same textures coming from Substance Painter, it is going to be using the same ones, right? So I'm going to call that master. I'm going to make another one. This is going to be a new material instance, mi underscore Freddy Ferd. And I'm going to open that file. I'm going to enable the tree. But now, this time around, I'm going to be using you, and you. I will be sharing a more complex material later, but it's a good idea to just get in the mindset of doing all of these sort of maneuvers to create a new material instance. That it's that way you can update the material at the given point, and if something changes on the master material, that's going to change it for everything. So in IGME 219, I'm going to create another folder. This is going to be called Freddy. And inside of Freddy, I'm actually going to be moving all of these materials. So from here to here, I'm going to be moving all of those onto Freddy. It's going to ask me, do you want to move them or copy them? So I'm going to move them. They are moved. And once I have this, what I'll say is import. And in here, I will be importing the Freddy. It's not Freddy skeleton or FNF skeleton, is Freddy. That's important because this is the one that contains the mesh. So I'm going to select that. Once I have this, I'm going to reset to default so you have everything on the same page. I don't want to import animations. I do want to convert the scene unit, and I don't want to create new materials. So over here, I'm just going to say, do not create new materials. So I'm going to hit import all. And just to make sure that everything is on the right size, I'm going to grab Freddy, I'm going to put it in the world. It is not going to come with any materials just yet. So close these and go here. It may give you a warning about the joints. Not all of the joints are being used, and that's why it's giving you that warning, but it's the right size. Okay, so now that I have that, what I will do is open Freddy once again, and I will be just drag and dropping this, right? So the first one goes here, and the second one goes here. It's gonna compile some shaders, gonna hit save, and that is your Freddy, right? So I should be able to see him on the scene. Now, the character controller that we have over here is neat, but it's using some things that I don't really want. So I'm going to go down to content, third person, and inside of third person, when I go to blueprints, you see that there's the character controller. So I will be opening these third person character controller. And actually, before I do that, what I'm going to do is take both of these guys, just the character controller. It's going to take this character controller and move them inside of the IGME Freddy folder. So take that character controller, move it here. This one is not copied, this one is moved. Okay, so move here. I'm gonna open Freddy, and now this third person character controller, there's a bunch of information here that I'm not gonna be using at the moment. I'm gonna go down to the viewport, I'm gonna select that, and I say drag and drop here, or just select this guy and click here, or look for the skeleton. There's a couple of ways to do this. And as you can see, I have completely replaced the character controller. So I'm hit play, and I should be able to see Freddy. But Freddy this time around is just playing airplane. And the reason this is happening is because there is no animation blueprint that is driving the animations of Freddy. So right now, it's just using the skeleton, it's facing the way that this is supposed to face, but he's not doing anything. And I don't have even the animations here. So it's time for me to import that. In the same folder, I'm going to control scroll down to make more space for it, and I'll say import. This time I'm gonna go for my idle cycle. So I'm gonna select idle, import, and this time it's gonna say, well, do you wanna use the skeleton that is in the same folder for that? Yes, I do. It's the same skeleton, so that's really, really important. So convert scene unit and anything else. There, as you can see, there's no mesh information. It's going to be using the skeleton that is here. So I'm just going to hit import. If it was another option here, import mesh, say no, but I'm going to say import all, and that is going to be my idle cycle. So AFN idle. I'm going to do the same for all the other files, but I wanted to show you one at a time. So walk, run, jump, and yeah, all of those are fine. Same skeleton, same settings. Import, put jump here, run here, and walk here. I'm also going to be importing from my desktop the skirt jump. So import. Let's see, I had an issue there. I'm going to do an import on skirt jump, and that was my assignment there. Oh, I tried to import the Maya file, I think, so that could happen. So import mesh. I don't want to import the mesh. So see, this was what I was telling you a second ago. I don't want to import the mesh. I just want to apply that animation over here. Let's say import all. And I might have some issues with my file, but that's okay. For now, I'll just leave it like this. And I'll re-export from Maya. So let's actually do that right now. So I'm going to say that this is my skirt jump. Good. Sometimes what you have to do is export the whole thing from here. So do all of that. Animation clips, and under settings, you need to bake the animation. Bake animation is fine. So desktop, and that might be it. So let's try that. And there's the skeleton there. Should be doing fine. So I'm gonna take that idle, and I'm gonna remove that. So because it thought it was still being in use. What is the name that I use? That's skeleton. Skirt jump, open. Seems fine, no issues. Yep, I don't know what I did wrong in the first export, but there you go, it's fixed. And now it's doing that. Perfect. So I have everything that I need in order to create my character controller. What I'm going to do now is I will right click and say animation, and I need an animation blend space 1D. So this is going to say what a skeleton you want to use. In my case, it's just going to be the FNF skeleton. This one is going to be animation underscore FNF underscore idle to run. and I'm going to open this. An animation blade space is a way of transitioning from one to another animation. So in my case, I want two things. The horizontal axis, I want to name that. This is going to be my speed, and this is going to be important for the actual code that we're going to be doing today. And then the minimum value, let's say 650. That's a good number. I'll explain why later, but it's going to go from 0 to 650. So it's just like the value that this is going to have. I'm going to take this idle and I'm going to put it here. Then I'm going to take my walk and I'm going to put it right here. And I'm going to take my run and I'm going to put it right here. So the idea is I should have a value. Let me put it out of the way. Let's control move it. That's why I was letting me do it. So if my value is here, minus control click. If my value is here, it's not going to be doing anything. If my value is here, it's going to be walking. And if my value is here, it's going to be running. The idea here is that this value is going to be driven by the actual character controller. And we're going to see that in a minute. But for now, it is all the samples that I have down there. So I'm going to hit save and I will just leave that be for a second. So what I want to do now is the character controller. I'm going to be right-clicking, animation, and then I want to make an animation blueprint. This is the thing that's going to drive my animation. So again, I want to do that from the phrase skeleton. I'm going to hit create, and this is going to be my anim BP as an animation blueprint underscore Freddy. So I'm going to open anim BP Freddy. And in here, you'll see that this is not really moving. I can potentially just take this idle, put it here, and then connect it. And then Freddy, once I compile, is going to be doing this. But this is just a single mindset, right? So depending on my speed, this is going to run fast or slow or whatever. So I don't want that. I want a way of controlling different states. Is it running? Is it jumping? Is it falling? Is it whatever, right? So over here, what I'm going to do is right click and say state machine. And then I want to do a new state machine. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to connect it here. I'm going to take this out and I can rename it if I want to. It's not really going to change because we're only going to have one single state machine. So I'm going to call that the default. But I'm going to open this, and then in the asset browser, you get to see that there's a bunch of things that I can use for this particular skeleton. So I'm going to take this out, and I will say state. So add a state, and the state in here is going to be idle to run. I'm going to open this, and I will just drag and drop my idle to run, and I can connect it directly here. Okay, so depending on the speed, this is going to be doing a thing. For that, I'm going to be making a new variable. So here in variable tab, I can just click on that and I will say, call this one the speed. But as you can see, this is a Boolean and I want to change this type to a float because this is the actual speed. So I'm going to click on that. I'll say float. They included a new way of changing the type right here in the Unreal Engine 5. 4 didn't have this option, but this is the speed, right? So it's going to start at 0. Once I compile, you'll see the default value for that being 0. But I want to be able to drive my animation with that. So I'm going to say get speed, drag and drop, get speed, and then connect these to the speed. So I have the two of them, and it's basically doing that part for me. All right. So that is the very basics of state machine. I only have a single state, right? The state is it's running. But I'm going to go back down to the event graph. And in the event graph, there's really nothing going on. So this is something that's going to trigger every single time. This is try get pawn honor is asking, can I use this animation in a set? So for instance, you have an NPC, your NPC dies, and you don't want to control the animation because the NPC is already dead. It already played the dead animation. You don't want the player to be doing anything else with that. So over here, what I'm going to do is drag out a pin, and this one is going to be called is valid. So is valid. What I'm saying is this pawn a valid pawn? If it is, then I will be able to get this, continue my workflow. So I'm going to hit compile and save. All right, so the next part is I want to get the character controller for this thing, so I need to get the movement component. So I'm gonna take this return value and say get movement component, and that is gonna let me control some of aspects that I will be modifying in a second. So I have a speed, but I want to set that speed, right? At this point the value was 0, and I need to actually start initializing it to something. So if this is a valid thing, I'm gonna say yes, initialize that. And then over here, the only thing that I need to do is get the speed in which a character is moving. Now, in this particular character controller, the speed is a vector. So it's a forward vector, and it's going to be saying how much I'm going to be moving from this point forward. So what I want to do is be able to get that or a movement vector and get the speed out of that. So for that reason, I will just need to say over here, get velocity. So once I have that velocity, this is basically just going to say, oh, I have a vector that I'm moving in a particular direction, but I don't care about anything. The only thing that I care is the vector length. So I'm going to take these and say vector length. And this is going to be vector length as XY. This is new to Unreal Engine 5. Unreal Engine 4 only had Unreal vector length, which would consider the C, which is up and down in Unreal Engine. So I'm going to say that, and this is just going to get me that velocity. So once I have that, that is going to get connected to the entry point, and ideally at this point, I'm going to tap that on the top. I would be able to just control that. One thing that I'm missing though is that, remember that I bring in my character controller over here. So that is the BP third person. I'm gonna double click that once again. And in the viewport, now I can select this guy and say, hey, connected to the animation class. What is the animation class? There's a bunch of them in here. This one is the MVP Freddy. So I'm gonna hit compile and save. Once again, let's try that. I have Freddy, and once Freddy is walking around, I should be able to see some transitions. As you can see, when I jump, it's not really doing the movement, but when I walk around, when I'm falling, I'm doing that. So falling is still sort of a velocity because it's going forward and down, okay? So I need to go to my an MVP from Freddy, and then I'm going to go back down to my event graph. And then over here, what I want to do is get the value if this thing is falling. So I'm going to say, make a new variable. This is going to be is falling. And this one is going to be a okay, so boolean is falling. I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to say get is falling. Actually, no, set is falling. I want to set this value. And I'm going to continue from this execution pin, right? So over here, I will grab the same movement component, and I'm going to say is falling. It's already a method. It's so used that it's already common in here. So if it's falling, I want to be able to control the movement, make sure that this guy is not doing that falling anymore. Okay, so now that I have all the basics, I have the is in air kind of logic, right? So I have this thing, it says, use the animation blueprint, let me know if this is a movement that I'm working with and what is going to be my movement. Now, my third person starts with a value of 350. I added in the an MVP, sorry, in the idle to run, I did 600, let's do 350. And one thing that I'm noticing is that this is not really an A, this is an AVS, animation blend space for Freddy, idle to run. So I'm gonna hit play, and I should be able to see him walking around in the world. Okay, perfect. And now one thing that I was noticing here, it's for whatever reason, I'm missing my speed, right? So it is going to be on 50, but I see I have a bunch of errors in my blend space because I don't have a thing that is going all the way here to the run. So let's put it back in place. I'm gonna hit save. I'm gonna dismiss all of these guys. Clear. Dismiss, 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 dismiss. Let's see. Run this. Walk around. Now it's running. And if I'm using a joystick here, for instance, I can just move it a little bit and it's gonna walk, and I push it all and it's gonna run. Okay, so the values that I was using are a little bit extreme, so I had to review a little bit what is the new changes that I did for that part. But at this point, I only have my character walking around the world, and in the next class, what we're going to do is make sure that we create the remaining stats so we can do more things with our character. So that's it. I'll see you in the next video.